This is Scott Carlberg, Yaskawa Product Management, and I'm here with Brian Knight, who's also one of our product managers. So I'm going to be going over the Sigma-7 400 volt product line that we're launching as of today, and Brian's going to talk about a couple of an extension to our direct drive motor product line toward the second half of this presentation. So again, what we're going to talk about is the Sigma-7 400 volt product. I'll do a overview of that in a bunch of slides here. We'll talk about the SGM-7D direct drive motor line and the SGM-7F direct drive motor product line. We've already released a good portion of that, but we're going to be releasing the rest of the product line, and Brian will talk about that. And then we'll go over all of the sales tools that are now available for these products. So this is a good picture of what the products look like. We'll kind of get into that a little bit more here in the next slides, but for the amplifier or the servo packs, there are two styles. There's a single axis version and a dual axis version. They have a new book style type design that we'll talk a little bit more about, which is a little bit different than what you've seen historically from Yaskawa. Again, this is a 400 volt AC input amplifier, and the sizes range from 500 watt up to 15 kilowatt. There are 3 rotary servo motor product lines that go along with these amplifiers. The SGM-7J, medium inertia up to, well, as low as 200 watt and up to 1.5 kilowatt. The SGM-7A is a low inertia line from 200 watt up to 5 kilowatt, and the SGM-7G is the medium inertia up to 15 kilowatt. Again, these motors are, they kind of fall in line with what you've seen historically from Yaskawa. But we'll talk more about that too. And then we'll look at some cables and accessories. So with the Sigma-7 400 volts product, the performance and the configuration is exactly the same as the Sigma-7 200 volt. It's all built off the same technology, the same architecture. So you've got the high bandwidth, you've got the 24-bit encoders on the motors, all the tuning algorithms that have improved, the tuningless function, like vibration suppression, all the things that we talk about with Sigma-7 are the same with the Sigma-7 400 volt series. All these, the servo packs are programmed with Sigma-1 Plus, just the same as you configure all of our products. So, for customers that are already using Yaskawa, it'll be a pretty easy transition to these products. When I launched the 200 volt product like a year and a half ago now, these are kind of the key facts that we went over. So environmentally, all the Sigma-7 motors are IP67. They don't run as hot, so they run more efficiently. These new servo packs do have some bus sharing functionality that we'll talk about. The motors are shorter than previous generation product, about 20% smaller on average. And as you'll see, these new servo packs will allow for some significant space savings in the panel, so I'll show you that. Also, as with the Sigma-5 and the Sigma-7 products, we're continuing with the integrated safety. We've got a SIL3 safe torque off circuit on board every amplifier, and then we've got an option card that allows for SIL3 safe stop 1, safe stop 2, and safe limited speed. So again, we can dive a little bit more into this in the upcoming slides. So with the servo packs, like I mentioned, there is a single axis version and a dual axis version. As you can see in the picture here, these can be stacked side by side. There's no space gap that's required in between the amplifiers. The control interfaces that are available are Mechatronic 3 and EtherCAT. One thing of note is that there is not an analog pulse interface with the Sigma-7 400 volt product. Most of our customers are kind of migrating away from that type anyways, going toward the digital networks. And like I said, there is an integrated safe torque off circuit in each amplifier. The dual axis amplifiers, there are 2 sizes, 750 watt and a 1.5 kilowatt. Again, these come in a Mechatronic 3 or EtherCAT flavors, and they also have the integrated safety circuit. So it's a book style design. It's kind of a European look and feel where you see all of the connectors are on the top and the bottom of the amplifier. And these amplifiers were designed specifically to minimize the width dimension. so that you can stack as many of these as possible inside of a panel in a row. So to illustrate some of the space savings, I just made a mock-up in SolidWorks to kind of compare two identical systems from Sigma-7 and from Sigma-5. So on the top here, you can see you've got 3 of the dual axis amps. So you've got 2 axis of 750 watt, 2 axis of 1.5 kilowatt, or actually 4 axis of 1.5 kilowatt, and then you've got 2 of the larger single axis sizes, the 3 kilowatt and the 5 kilowatt. And then down below you can see the Sigma-5 equivalent. So you've got 2 500 watts, 2 1 kilowatts, and in Sigma-5 the 500 watt through 1.5 kilowatt are all the same size. So there's 6 of those amplifiers and then 2 of the larger sizes. And what you see here on the slide is to scale. So that is, you're literally you're taking up half of the cabinet space with this new product as you would have with a traditional Sigma-5 system, 400 volt. So this is really great news. We've already got a number of OEMs that have evaluated this product, the Sigma-7 400 volt product, and they are proceeding with it. They really like the design. I think this is going to be a very popular product line for us. So I'm pretty excited about it. Like I said, there is a new connector layout. So if we kind of zoom in on that, all of your inputs for the amplifier come into the top side of the servo pack. So you can see here your input AC 400 volt. The DC power, if you want, I'll talk about this I think in the next slide, but if you want to run this in DC mode, you can bypass each of the integrated power supplies and just run off the DC bus with a separate converter. That connection right there is how you would kind of link those all together. You got your control power. This is actually a dual axis drive, so you'll see 2 encoder inputs on this amplifier and 2 safety circuits. You've got an I/O port for your traditional CN1, all the inputs and outputs on the CN1 connector. And then you've got your network connections at the top, either Mechatronic or EtherCAT. We do have, well, actually all of these connectors are a new style, but specifically the CN1 is a little bit different than what we've had in the past. This connector, actually, you just wire right into it. It's a terminal block of sorts that's right on the amplifier. With our other products, you have a connector that comes out into a cable that breaks out into a terminal strip that you would mount, somewhere near your amplifier. With this product, you just wire right up to this CN1 connector that's right on the amplifier. We've also incorporated a kind of slick way to deal with the shielding from your power connector. We have this little shielding clamp, and as you can see in the zoom in here, it mounts to the bottom of the amplifier where your power cable is going to come in. And our power cables, which I'll show you on a later slide, have the shield exposed. So basically this clamp just clamps right around the shield. So you don't have to strip back the cable and pull out the shield and then terminate it accordingly. We kind of take care of all that in a nice clean fashion here with this spring clamp. And this is traditionally the way that a lot of the European manufacturers handle the shielding connection. So it is a nice clean way to handle that. It's pretty nice. I talked about linking the DC buses together. And this is essentially what it would look like. You would be coming off of a power supply, and you're just bypassing each of the internal power supplies in the amplifiers. You're linking the DC bus together for applications where you might want to share the bus if you have some regen, share between the amps. But this is kind of what that would look like. There are some restrictions on sharing the bus, and I'm not going to get into that on this website, but we will have an applications note kind of describing that. So if you are looking at an application where you want to do something like this, talk to our applications guys here, and we can kind of help you through that. And then other accessories that we're going to offer with this product, we're going to be offering line filters, regen resistors as always, surge absorbers, and DC reactors. So all these will be kind of outlined in the product literature and in the online pricing tool. So this amplifier with regard to option card is a little bit different in that the space allocated for the option card is already enclosed in the design of the amplifier. So you don't have to add, well, it's an option card, but it doesn't extend past the the dimensions of the standard amplifier, if you know what I mean. You can see here that the option cards just pop right into that little cavity, and then there's a cover that goes over the top of it. The option cards that are available are there's a new advanced safety card for the Sigma-7 400 volt product. And so the old safety card with Sigma-5 was a SIL 2 rated. So this new one will be SIL 3 rated, so a higher level of safety, and you'll get the same, the safe limited speed, safe stop 1, and safe stop 2 that we had with the previous card. Full closed loop is the same card that we currently use for Sigma-5. So again, those aren't available right now today, but I would say within the next month or so, I'll have those in stock and ready to ship. So stay tuned for that. Here's a snapshot of the ServoPack part numbering. These charts actually show, these charts are right out of the new technical supplement, which is posted to the website today. But these include kind of the part numbering for both 200 volt and 400 volt. The 400 volt part numbers have this F64 suffix at the end of them. And there's some extra functionality. There's a zone table output that the standard amplifiers don't have. That this will be the standard the standard stock offering that'll be included in the package with the 400 volt amplifiers. So just don't be surprised when you see that suffix at the end. That's normal. And then for the dual axis amps, there's no 700 suffix like we have in the 200 volt products. It's just the 2RAA 30A is what it'll be for the ones that we stock. But that'll be the full part number, and that will include the safety circuit. You know, you can kind of dig through all the details of the technical documentation, and try and figure out the part numbers. But really, I would encourage you, if you're configuring a system for somebody, definitely go to the online pricing tool and use that. We spent a ton of time, configuring that so that you can only come away with good bills of materials. You're not going to come away with any weird part numbers that aren't going to work or are non-stock. So use the online pricing tool, and then you kind of don't have to worry about part numbers. It configures everything for you. The motors are mostly the same kind of look and feel as what you're familiar with the Sigma-7 200 volt and the Sigma-5 product lines. There are the SGM7J, SGM7A, and SGM7G. So the J replaces the 400 volt SGM. Actually, there wasn't a 400 volt version of the SGM JV from Sigma-5. So a little mistake on my slide here, but these are essentially new in the smaller sizes. So we have 200 watt up to 1.5 kilowatt in the SGM7J in 400 volt. For SGM7A, this replaces from Sigma-5 the SGM AV and the SGM SV. So we folded both of those product lines into this one motor line, SGM7A. Again, these are low inertia motors for 200 watt up to 5 kilowatts. And then the SGM7G replaces the Sigma-5 SGM GV, 400 volt. And again, these go up to 15 kilowatt. Just one note, at the bottom end, you're at the 450 watt, the SGM7G 05D. There is a 300 watt version of the 200 volt, which we are not offering in the 400 volt. So just a little note if you have customers using 300 watt. Some more detail on the motors. So again, you have the improved encoder accuracy and the improved encoder resolution with Sigma-7. So you've got a 24-bit multi-turn absolute encoder. You've got improved efficiency, decreased settling time, and that's due in part to the higher bandwidth of the Sigma-7 system, and coupled with the higher feedback resolution. Size reduction, which we talked about before. These motors are smaller than the previous generation. Every motor is IP67. We've got some new connectors on here that I'll talk about in the next slide. There are temperature sensors on the motor, and as far from a mounting standpoint, these are fully compatible, backward compatible with Sigma-5. So if you're replacing an older, actually Sigma-5, Sigma-2, we've always kind of maintained the same mounting provisions: the pilot diameter, the shaft diameter, shaft length, bolt hole, bolt circle. All these things are the same. So if you're retrofitting a machine to the newer technology, it'll be pretty easy. And again, the Sigma series, we've had these in the field for over 25 years, and we've been building off of the same technology for a long time. So a huge amount of these out in the field. There's Sigma-1 product that's still going strong out there. So this is a very solid product with a lot of high level of quality that we've kind of shown over the many years. So these new connectors are a little bit different than what you've seen with previous products. The power connector rotates, and I'm not sure how this will come through in the webinar, but I just made a little video yesterday to just show you actually what this looks like. Hopefully you guys can see that coming through. But basically the power connector will rotate in a 270-degree arc. The arc does change a little bit. I put these graphics up here, which are in the technical supplement, but the arc changes slightly based on the specific motor that you're dealing with, but they all rotate 270 degrees, which is kind of handy in a lot of applications, depending on how you're routing your cables. The power connectors come in 3 different sizes based on the size of the motor. And then the feedback connector, well, it's still talking about the power connector. So this is a picture of the power cable. And like I said before, the power cables, the shield is exposed on these. So when you're using that shielding clamp on the amplifier, basically you don't have to do anything. You can just connect the power cable and then you clamp down on the shield and you're good to go. The encoder cables come in either an incremental or an absolute flavor. The incremental flavor won't have the integrated battery into the cable, so just a straight beat feedback cable that's terminated in either this straight connector or a right angle connector, which you can see here mounted on the motor. The absolute, we have an absolute cable as well that comes with the battery. It's this guy over here. Right now we only have that in the straight connector flavor. So you'll see that when you're configuring a bill of materials, if you click on absolute, you're only going to have that straight connector option. So we're working on the development of the right angle connector, but it's going to take a little bit more time. So once we have that available, I'll send out a notification for everybody that that's available. And then again, just to reiterate, the power connector rotates, so you can kind of orient that however you want. The feedback connector points straight up. So if you have the straight connector, your cable's going to be coming straight, perpendicular out of the motor. And if you have the right angle connector, it only orients to exit out the rear of the motor, like is shown here in the picture. And then here's a snapshot of the Sigma-7 motor partner ring. Very similar to partner ring what you've seen from previous generation product. But here it is. This is in the technical supplement. And again, if you're using the online pricing tool, you'll always be steered in the right direction as far as putting together a bill of material. That's about it for my portion. I'm going to let Brian Knight take over to describe these direct drive motor products. So go ahead, Brian.
Hi, good morning. Thanks, Scott. So I'm going to start off with the new SGM-7D direct drive rotary motors. Many of you will recognize these are the old Yaskawa motors that were sold under the Dynaserve brand. And also Parker used that name for a while. So this is a similar style of motor. We adopted the production of those motors, and so we don't have all of the flavors, but we have quite a few of them. So I'm just going to go through some of the features of this motor. So to start off, this is a unique premium product that features exceptionally high torque. And we have quite a few different models going all the way up to 240 Newton meters of rated torque. So that's, first of all, very, very unique to have that much torque available in a direct drive rotary motor. We also feature very low speeds. So one of the advantages of a direct drive rotary motor is that the low speed capabilities generally match up with the low speed requirements of most applications without a gearbox. And these motors really kind of take that to the extreme with rated speeds as low as 30 RPMs. So that's quite a bit different than, say, the SGM-7F Series, which has rated speeds around 300 RPMs. And again, peak speeds then would be from 48 to 360 RPMs, depending on the model. So when you combine the high torque and the low speed, you really kind of get the advantages of a normal rotary servo motor with up to 100-to-1 gear reduction, all baked into the SGM-7D. And because we are using such low speeds, that keeps the power down. So the largest motor that we offer is right around 800 watts for a tremendous amount of torque. So that's a very nice efficiency advantage of these motors. And also, because you're eliminating the length of the gearbox, you end up with a much more compact package. Being that these are Sigma-7 series motors, they do feature the 24-bit encoders. We have the 24-bit multi-turn absolute and the 24-bit incremental encoders available, though the multi-turn absolute will be the stocked flavor. These motors also feature very high mechanical precision. There's a standard option and a high mechanical precision option. We're going to standardize on the high precision option, and those have runouts down to 5 micrometers on those. So those are very, very high precision motors. They're designed to use crossed roller bearings, which are designed to take very high loads and still maintain that accuracy. And the high mechanical precision option is really not that much more expensive, so that's going to be the standard as well. And these motors are designed to handle extremely high inertia ratios. There's a couple of ways that we do that. One is because the RPMs are low, it keeps the regen energy down. So we can handle loads up to 4,000-to-1 inertia mismatches with the appropriate dynamic brake and regen resistors on there. Another difference here with this motor series is that we use an outside rotor design. So the stator is actually in the inside of the motor and the outside of the housing rotates. And that gives even higher rotor inertia on there, which lowers your inertia ratio. So 4,000-to-1 with these motors is quite a bit more inertia handling than our other inner rotor design direct drive rotary motors. And we also offer 7 different frame sizes. And unlike our other motors where the frame size is really just kind of a scale for the same design, each of these frames have a little bit different design to them. So for example, we have round motors from 107 millimeters up to 264 millimeters, but we also have a square foot mount motor that is 224 millimeters square. So there's quite a bit different model designs to fit different applications. And there are 2 different flange options available, and really, we call it flange, it's really how the cable exits the motor. We have the cable on the side for the F, G, and H, as well as the L series flanges, and we have the cable on the bottom for all but the L style. And we've found that the bottom cable exit is the most popular, so that is going to be our standard stocked model. And finally, one of the last really big unique advantages of this product is the very large through bore for these motors. For example, I'm showing the I-frame here, and it has a 150 millimeter bore in that. So it's a very thin ring of a motor with a very large diameter bore, which is good for passing cables or hoses. You can pass the connectors even for other axes to go onto a piece of assembly equipment, for example. You can pass all of that through. These would also be good for robotic applications where you have all of the cabling for the downstream axes to pass through. So that 150 millimeter bore is really pretty unique in the industry. So to show you just a little bit of our stocking strategy here, we're going to be using the motors ending in 7C52. That's going to be the 24-bit absolute multi-turn encoder, which with a parameter change, you can use those as incremental or single turn absolute. We're going to use, the C is just the design revision, so there's no change there. And the 5 is going to be the bottom connectors. And again, that's been our most popular option for all of our other direct drive rotary motor series. And then the 2 is the high precision option. It turned out to be a very, very small cost difference, and by allowing us to stock half as many motors, we can keep more motors on the shelf that would apply to the most applications. So I've already had a number of requests for that high precision option, so I think that'll be a very good feature to have in our stock motors. One thing, because this is considered kind of a premium product here, the FT82 function is required on the amplifiers to operate the SGM-7D motors. There is also an FT83 option, which adds the indexer function with the FT82 SGM-7D support that's available on the analog and pulse models. So when you specify the motor, you'll need to use the F82 suffix on that, or F83 for the indexer function. This F82 will also be available in the Mechatrol Link 3 and EtherCAT models. Applications for this motor include rotary indexing tables, especially large indexing tables with high inertia, or indexing tables on assembly equipment where you have a lot of cabling and tubing that needs to pass through the motor. 4-bar mechanisms are another good example, because you have to pass some of the mechanical components through the bore of the motor. So this large bore diameter is really going to help out with those large type of mechanisms, as well as 4th and 5th CNC axes, which typically have low speeds and need very, very high mechanical precision and rigidity to resist cutting forces. So these motors are really ideal for use as a 4th or 5th CNC axis. And again, any mechanism that requires cables or tubing to pass through the center of the motor, this is going to be your best candidate. One thing to note is that SGM-7D motors are not UL, so just be aware of that when specifying SGM-7D motors for your application. And final note, forecasts would be greatly appreciated if you were getting an OEM that's really interested in SGM-7D motors. We do have initial stock on the shelf now in Buffalo Grove, but there is a 16-week lead time for these motors. It's a little longer than our usual product. So if you have a customer that's interested in these motors or considering using them for volume applications, I would really appreciate getting some forecasts in so we can ensure that we have the right product in stock. So now let's talk about the new SGM-7F models that we're adding. The SGM-7F has already been launched, but we're adding the new A-frame series. Those are going to be the 100 millimeter diameter models. We're launching the 2 and the 5 Newton meter size models. So those are going to be the SGM-7F 02A, 7, M, 11, and 41, and the SGM-7F 05A, 7, M, 11, and 41. Again, those are the 100 millimeter diameter small frame size motors with the 24-bit absolute encoders. They're available with the bottom or the side connector options, and these motors are made in Buffalo Grove. So I'm going to turn this back over to Scott now.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Just wanted to run through some of the sales tools that we have available now for all these products. So we have a motion brochure, which is just kind of a high-level overview of all of our motion control products. That's been updated with all these products that we've been discussing here in this webinar. The Sigma-7 brochure is a little fold-out brochure that's specific to Sigma-7. That's been updated as well with the 400-volt products. We've got the Sigma-7 technical supplement. That's the big 400 or so page document that gets into the kind of the nitty-gritty of all the technical details of these products. So that has been updated with all of the 400-volt products, as well as the 2 direct drive motors that Brian was talking about. I had mentioned the online pricing tool a couple times during this webinar. It's a great tool. If you're not already using it, please go in and take a look at it. It's a bill of material configurator based on the motor that you choose. It kind of walks you through everything else that you'll need, the amplifier, all the cables and accessories that you'll need for, specifically for what you need in your application. So please use that. It has all these new products in there. As of, I think we made that live yesterday. So all of these new products are in there. The website has been updated. So there's new landing pages for all these products. And that is, from what I'm told, live right now. So you should be able to go up on the website and find all these new products and all the associated information. So on the website, yeah, so we've got all the manuals associated with these products are loaded up there now. And again, the drawings I'm working on getting loaded. We also have Sigma Select, new versions out. So go up on the website and download the new version of Sigma Select right now. This has got all of the new direct drive motors in it. Still finalizing getting the Sigma-7 400 volt products in there, but we'll have that shortly. And then one other flyer that I'm working on is just that, kind of for existing customers, existing Yaskawa customers, to show the differences between the Sigma-7 400 volt product and the Sigma-7 200 volt product, just because the kind of the form and fit of the Sigma-7 400 volt amplifiers is a little bit different than what we've had previously. So I'm gonna have a little flyer that kind of outlines, all the advantages of the new design. So that's all we have as far as material goes. We do have a number of questions here. So first question was, is there a download of the PowerPoint? I will make the PowerPoint available when we send out the link to the recorded webinar. So I'll also send a link for the PowerPoint slides, and you guys can have that. Will there be a 7 kilowatt version of the SGM7A 400 volt motor? With Sigma 5, we had a 400 volt version of the 7 kilowatt motor. There is a 7 kilowatt 400 volt motor. It got released considerably later than the rest of the product. It got released in Europe like late last year. So I'm in the process of getting a few of those on order so we can get them in stock, and then once we have them in stock, I'll add that to the technical supplement. But that size is available, so you'll be seeing more information on that in the next month or so. The question about the I/O connector on the 400 volt amplifiers, the CN1 connector, and the question is, does that come with the amplifier or is that shipped separately? That is shipped separately. So you'll see that part in the online pricing tool configurator as a separate accessory. But if you are going to be using any of the I/O on the amp, you're going to need that connector. So you definitely need to order that separately. Next question: will there be a command option version of the 400 volt amplifier? For those of you that are familiar with Sigma 5, there were 4 types. So there was analog, EtherCAT, Mechatronic, and a command option style. And the command option style accommodated option cards like the MP2600. There is no command option version of the Sigma-7 400 volt amplifier. Some of the new amplifiers that we just came out with for the Sigma-7 200 volt, like the Sigma-7 SIEC, which is essentially a MP2600 built into the base amplifier. We're going to have that. That's kind of a phase 2 of this product launch. So we'll have a few new products. We'll have the Sigma-7 SIEC on the 400 volt amplifier. We'll have the Sigma Logic Compact on the 400 volt amplifier. And those are the 2 that we're working on right now. So those are probably going to be coming within the next few months here. We're working on those now, getting those ready to getting them set up and ready to ship. There is no version of the amplifier that allows you to connect 2600 to it. Can the functional safety card be added to the dual axis drive? Yes, it can. The only thing about that is the advanced safety. When you add the advanced safety card to the dual axis amp, that functionality only works for one of the 2 axes. So if you need safe limited speed, for instance, you would only get that on one of the 2 axes. If you need it on both axes, then you would need to use single axis amps. Can the main power be daisy chained? Okay, so when we're talking about daisy chaining power and control power and bus power to the amplifiers, so like I said, we are working on documentation where you can daisy chain the DC bus from amp to amp. And you can also daisy chain the control power and the network cables. As far as if you wanted to daisy chain the main AC power, I'm gonna have to look into that. I don't know kind of what would be required to do that. So I need to dig into that further. But I can get the guy who asked that question. I'll get back to you on that. And then any plans for MP2600 or S7 or Sigma-7 SIEC on the 400 volt. So I just said that we will have a Sigma-7 SIEC. So the integrated single axis controller we'll have on the 400 volt amplifier probably in the next few months here. So somebody asked about the EtherCAT interface on the 400 volt amplifier, because I guess maybe it didn't show in the part numbering scheme that I showed. Yes, there is a EtherCAT version of the Sigma-7 400 volt amplifier, and there's also a Mechatrolling 3 version. So either or, and those are, and the EtherCAT is integrated into the amplifier, so there's no option card associated with that. Question on the 400 volt cables: are they more expensive than the 200 volt? They're slightly more expensive, but they're in the same ballpark. I think they're maybe 5 to 10% more expensive than the 200 volt cables, because they are kind of a little bit more rugged and kind of a higher end connector. Somebody asked about the encoder cable with respect to the right. I mentioned that the right angle connector version of the feedback connector, we don't currently have that with an integrated battery, but there is while we're still developing that product with the battery, we do have the little 0.3 meter battery extension cable that can be used with the incremental encoder cable. So you just kind of connect that to the end of the incremental cable, and then you'll have a cabling that has a battery integrated. Are the cables flex rated? Yes, all the power cables are flexible and shielded, and all the encoder cables are flexible and shielded as well. Are there any direct drive motors compatible with the 400 volt amplifiers? The answer to that one's no. Right now, all the direct drive motor technology that we have is 200 volt. I do have it in my longer term plan to look into 400 volt windings for the direct drive motors, but right now we don't have that available.
There was a question: what is the safe allowable inertia mismatch for the SGM7D series? And that's going to vary by motor model. Some of them have inertia mismatches of 50 to 1 without any external resistors, ranging all the way up to 1,000 to 1 without resistors, and 4,000 to 1 with resistors. So it varies considerably by model. So please consult the technical supplement for that.
There's a question about the temperature sensor I mentioned there's a temperature sensor on the motors. It's not a separate wire in the cable that's transmitted through the serial communications in the feedback cable. So you can access that temperature through one of the parameters in Sigma-1 Plus, but it's not anything that's kind of wired up separately.
There was another question: what is the environmental rating on the direct drives? That again varies a little bit by model. For the SGM7F, those are all IP42. They're all 200 volt compatible, and some are 100 volt compatible. For the SGM7D, it varies by model. They're either IP20 or IP30, and all of them are 200 volt. Some of them are also compatible with 100 volt, and there are no 400 volt compatible direct drive motors. There was another question about UL. To my knowledge, there's no plan for UL certification of the SGM7D motors.
There's a question about the lower inertia Sigma-7 400 volt motors, so that would be the SGM7A motors. Question was, is there any plan to have larger sizes of those above the 5 and the 7 kilowatt? No, there's no plan right now to have anything larger in that low inertia product line. I mean, typically when you're in the bigger size motors, you're typically connecting up to larger inertias, and you want a little bit more beef in the rotor of the motor to help with the inertia mismatches. So no, there's no plan for that. Can the Sigma-7 400 volt servo pack control Sigma 2, Sigma 3, and Sigma 5 motors? If you have a situation like that, I would ask you to consult our product engineering group. Some of those combinations may be possible. We haven't officially tested any of those. So yeah, I would just, if you have a situation where you need to do that, I would ask you to consult our product engineering group. And then the last question I see up here, are there any future plans for a analog pulse version of the Sigma-7 400 volt amplifier? There are no current plans for that, so as of now, there will be no analog pulse version of the Sigma-7 400 volt amplifier. But we still have, Sigma-5 is still a very valid product and was going to be around for a long time. If you have an analog 400 volt application, you can use the Sigma-5 400 volt amplifiers. So I appreciate everyone attending the meeting. Again, thank you. We'll see you next time we have a webinar here.